I tell you about this post today.
No.
This kid posted, and I assume it's a kid, and they're like, "Hey, how do I answer AFC? Right? AFC is a theory position. You read in the app, affirmative framework choice, right? Basically says that the app gets to choose a framework, and the negative doesn't get to contest it.
I'm gonna scoot up a little.
You want me to as well?
Oh, just why not?
Oh, sure. So
I don't
yeah,
think we're taking up very much of the frame.
yeah. So they're like, "How do you answer AFC?" And I was like, "Well, you could read nibs. The app doesn't get nibs, necessary but insufficient burdens." And I was like, "And here's an interp for what that might look like, right? It's like the affirmative may not, blah 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 blah, right?" 10 seconds later, this kid comments back, "All right, but what about the standards and voters?" And I was just like, "Fucking figure it out, kid." It's like how much, it's like the fish, give a man a fish or teach a man a fish, but it's like even more so because it's like, one, this is theory debate, so it's always the same.
Yeah.
Right? It's always just about who limits more ground, education, fairness, limits, all that kind of stuff, blah 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 blah. And the idea that it's like, yeah, let me just write out this entire position for you, kid. And that'll benefit. You didn't know this thing existed 6 seconds ago before I told you it existed and would help you. And then you're like, well, now that I have the interpretation, I can't think of a single reason why this interpretation is
The
preferred.
big thing is that people don't understand that, you're not my student, right? Not that I would do this with my students, but starting with that premise, what do I gain from you running theory well? I'm not doing good in the world, right? It's not like, oh, now we have better discourse about Iran. And it's like, now somebody said the word nib not in relation to the Black Sabbath song. Wow. And I told him what to say, and he won. This person I don't know. That makes me feel good because...
Well, I mean, but it's also, we do this, obviously, and this is, intended to be a free resource and help people and all that kind of stuff, and we go out of our way to do AMAs or, answer questions on Reddit for a lot of stuff, but, you want to do that in such a way that hopefully, invites people to do more work, but people don't want that. They just want the actual thing, literally to be able to copy my Reddit comment and then be like, now I can read this in a debate or whatever. And
right.
That ain't good for you.
What is it? What?
And also, it's this sounds. I don't want this to be shitty because, as I've said, we totally do help people for free all the time and that stuff, right?
Right.
And this week, I've been.
What does it mean one of your ribs is bothering you? Am I dying?
Depends on which rib. But it could also be. I believe it's called the intercostals, are the muscles around your ribs, and those can be sore from sleeping on them wrong or churning or blah blah blah.
Problem solved.
Anywho, back at it. We get paid to coach and to write files, and yet we spend tons of time. This week, probably 40 hours we spent coaching for free, and to do more of that, to give more stuff for free or whatever, or that for people you don't know or for people who clearly don't appreciate. One of the big problems I have with the subreddit is that when there are people who ask questions and then you respond to it or whatever, you never hear back. They're never like, hey man, it really helped when you did this thing, and that's not why you do it necessarily, but for coaching it kind of is. In-person coaching, it's great to see your kids and have the relationship and blah 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 and see them develop. But for these people, these are nameless, faceless, God-forsaken children.
Nietzsche talks about
I apologize for your ears.
I don't think it was that loud.
I just saw it go pretty
Oh,
high.
you saw it peak?
Yeah.
I can just
It's
whittle
usually
the thing.
good. Yeah.
Nietzsche talks about how there's... Did I spill hot sauce on these pants? Nietzsche talks about... two forms of competition. Two forms of wanting to beat your opponent, right? And one is where you want to go up to the level they're at and beat them, and that's what you're aspiring to, that's what the drive makes you want to do. And the other is where you want to bring them down to your level.
Yeah, beat them on your terms, kind of.
You use the term bring them down to your level to be beat them on your terms, beat them talking about the things you want to talk about. but literally it's about like handicapping your opponent.
Oh.
Right? It's like you want to handicap your opponent rather than improve and be at their level. And that's the impression I get from theory debate. I think these kids don't actually like theory debate. They don't actually like... Because they don't want to come up with their own standards or anything, right? They don't like... No part of it comes out of them. And I think all it is like... People are better at me. Better at me? Better than me. And, this thing lets me beat them even though they're better than me. I don't think that should be your goal. I think your goal should be to get better.
Someone the other day...
And sorry, real quick, and the other thing is, like, I'm not interested in helping those people. I'm interested in helping people get better. I want to make people in debate better at debate. What does that help me to handicap people I don't know to help people I don't know?
I had that long thread we looked through and all that stuff the other day with that person kind of commenting back and forth who seemed to be from a policy background. It was actually pretty cool in the end. Yeah. But at one point I remember, because we were talking about like my issues with K's as the affirmative and blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff, and they were kind of just like, the better debater or the better team always wins, and I'm just like, could you imagine believing that statement? Like that. Like, you don't think upsets exist? Yeah. Like, and more importantly, it's like, what does better debater imply in this context? Because it's like, great, if there's a guy who's like, or girl, or whoever, you know, who's like bodying people because they're like the best case debater in the world, but they've never seen theory, and then they lose to T, that doesn't mean the other team is like necessarily better than them or whatever. It just means that they lost. Like, it's entirely possible to lose rounds that you were the better team in. Happens frequently.
Let me see what's up with this.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me what makes good evidence. It's like...
That was like, what's a good card or whatever.
Yeah, and I was like, what is a good card? I mean, the short answer is... Well, the shortest answer is everything's a good card until you have a better card. Mm-hmm. And after that, it's what, like recency, peer review.
I mean, I think that stuff matters way less, actually, than people think it does most of the time.
Right.
I think in, let's say, 8 out of 10 debates, no one's gonna like who your author is or like how good of a source they are is like not gonna be contested. And so it's a question of like, what does the card actually say?
Well, so what the kid was really asking, yeah, of course. But what that question was actually asking is like, do I need to know the methodologies that my cards?
Yeah, I saw them say that. You don't need to know that almost ever, but if you do know it and it's relevant, then yes, that's good.
I mean, here's
so, like,
the thing.
I guess real quick to give an example. If, like, your card comes from, like, a meta-analysis, right? Like, it's a study about 100 other studies and draws a conclusion based on that. That's a better card than some dude's blog, obviously. So, in that instance, yes, knowing the methodology matters, but...
Yeah, but the thing is, like... The question is, like, how good do you need to be? Right? Like, I think people... are very used to a school system driven system of assessment, where they're like, oh, okay, well, what do I do to get the A? It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, there's not like a fixed criteria necessarily.
Right, there's 20,000 people in the country that do this. How good do you want to be? Do you want to be the best person? Then yeah.
Well, I think part of the problem though is like the question of like needing to know the methodology and blah 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 blah. Like a lot of people, especially in the policy world, and technically I think the rules say you're supposed to do this. You're supposed to include like the quals of the author or whatever, like as part of the citation.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, if your debates more often than not, time to meet Mark right there. Actually, go on a second.
They're coming down to the methodology. Of the card
what are you doing? Like, if you this debate should not be coming down to like who was your author or what is the
methodology. Because by the time they're talking about that, you shouldn't need to defend it. You should be able to shift to other things that are undercovered and leverage that.
Yeah.
Or is he here?
He's about to be here, yeah.
Okay. Tell him I say hi.
For sure.
If you had to fence the members of any sitcom to escape like a torture chamber, which sitcom do you think you'd have the best chance fencing? Oh, fucking, I got it.
Well, I've got like 2 or 3 in mind.
Hit me.
My first thought was The Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, but they were like, I imagine they use the trope where like, oh my god, this person's randomly super talented at this thing.
Which led me to 2.5 Men, because there's so few of them.
Yeah, but that's still 2.5 men, and especially the half man grows up. He's not.
I want to get him when he's like a quarter man.
What if that show was about two men and a centaur? No, that's like 3 guys you gotta, and then they're
How many
like.
people are you talking about? Where it's only been one person.
Well, they're like full. Okay, keep going. What was your third
How
thought?
about Frasier? I'm just gonna do Frasier. Just me versus Frasier.
Dude, this fencing is a noble sport. I'm sure Fraser and Niles are good at fencing. Bro, you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Boy Meets World.
Minkus literally fences in Boy Meets World.
I can take fucking Minkus.
Like, yeah, Minkus gonna piece you up.
But no, it was made in the late 90s, but set in the mid 70s.
Would you like the other half before you do?
There was one fortune cookie?
Mm-hmm.
You will touch the hearts of many. Not in this video.
I think that imposter syndrome is like I'd hate when people are like, oh, I found out about this thing and that means I have it. You know what I mean? I think that it's probably one of those things where people think they have it that don't have it, and then that's like not great for the people who do really kind of like deal with it or whatever. But I think that something approximating imposter syndrome, right? A general sense of I'm not good enough, but not that is like pathological, so to speak, or whatever, happens to...
How people use the term OCD, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. That's really, exactly what I'm getting at, right? It's like, oh, I, lock my doors twice. It's like, okay, cool. But yeah, I think that a lot of people deal with things similar to that, and some people obviously have different shades or degrees of that. For some people, it's far more serious and blah. But I think that happens in competitive disciplines a lot, and especially in competitive disciplines that are not objective, like debate. Because, like, I mean, there's a saying in basketball, it's ball don't lie.
Mm-hmm.
You know what that means?
I can piece it together.
Well, it's a very specific thing. Like when someone gets a foul called on them or whatever, right? And it should have been called. They miss the shot, and people go, "Ball don't lie. Shouldn't have been a foul, right? Like ball don't lie or whatever, right?" But then it also gets extrapolated to like, well, like obviously they're good because the ball went in the hoop 50 times. You know what I mean for them or whatever, and you can know. Like, it's objective, you can know, right? Even though when they're saying it, a lot of the time they're doing it in, like, a weird, like, ethereal sense. But in basketball and baseball and whatever, like, it's, you know who's good because they win a lot, and it's objective that they won, right? But in debate, because there's not an objective, like, metric of winning or being good, people are willing to delegitimize, like, damn near any success. And that can... hurt you, right? Regardless of kind of what level you're at. And I think that obviously this happens to a lot of like intermediates, I guess is what I'd refer to them as in debate, right? Because like that's just the level they're at, right? Where like it tends to be the case in a lot of like competitive ladders, like rankings of people, that people on the bottom think they should be at the top, and so then when they go up against intermediates, they talk shit to them. And then people who are on the top
either talk shit to them or just can't even be bothered with the intermediates at all, and then all the intermediates like are kind of just stuck in this limbo. But I think that, and also it's just by the nature of sort of distributions, most people are average or in the middle or intermediate. That's where they are. And so I think that what I really want to say basically is, because I was thinking about this, and I've known a lot of people who've kind of dealt with things similar to that to different degrees, and I was going to say just essentially that, like, I think that I wasn't particularly conscious of it by that name or anything. Like, I wouldn't have said I have imposter syndrome. I still wouldn't say that. But I would definitely say that regardless of how well I did competitively, I still find myself thinking, like, yeah, but no one, like, thinks I'm good or whatever. And that might be true, that might not be true or whatever in terms of people thinking that. People probably just don't think about me at all because I don't think about them. But I definitely think it still, and like that's despite being like, look, I know that we reached rank 1, I know that we finished rank 2, I know that we were national semifinalists twice, I know that other than literally the national champions or national finalists, there was no team that like beat us more than once if we debated them more than once. And so like we had objectively good success, so we did really well, but I still find myself saying those facts as like well, I know I'm good, like convincing myself, like, well, you did this and you did this, right? And like, I've had a lot of coaching conversations with Sasan and with Steve and with Tony when he was around. Bam. Also, our mentor died.
Yeah,
we didn't mention that. Our mentor died.
We're gonna add that by making something.
Yeah. Love him to death. But yeah, and now the love has ceased because of that.
It's to death.
Yeah. But bottom line though is like I would talk to those people all the time, and like they would try and reaffirm to me that I was good, but like I don't think there's anything the vast majority of people could tell me that would make me legitimately believe that no, like you were really good.
Well, it can't take you all the way there, but not having that is also rough. Right? Like, not having any encouragement or any validation makes it really difficult for you to go the other rest of the way. So it's about a 50% thing, right? Like, other external forces can validate you to about, like, halfway, maybe a little bit less. And the last jump is, like, a personal...
Do you have anything like that where, like, I can think of the validation that I think meant the most for me and did the most for me? There's 2 specific instances, and one of them, strangely, is probably the most. And like, I've talked about this before, but when my career ended and whatnot, I was really sad for a long time. I don't even know what's sad. I was just bummed about it, and like I wish I had done more. And like I would think every single day, I found myself thinking like, God damn it, why didn't we go for condo? Oh, blah blah. We should have done this. We could have done better. Blah 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 blah. For like almost a year. But I remember I was talking to Sean Tai, one of my really close friends. Like, you know, he's a really, really good dude in the community, but not necessarily someone who people think of as like, you know, the most elite debater or whatever. But Sean, we logged on to, we just added each other on Steam because we were going to play Counter-Strike or something. And his name was like this, I don't know if it was German or Nordic or whatever, right? And I was like, what is this? And he goes, it's a chess player. And I was like, what? Why is your name this random chess player? And he goes, this is so weird, but I have you saved on my friends list as Magnus Carlsen. And I have you as Magnus Carlsen because I like legitimately thought that like you and Dallas were like the best and we're like gonna win nats and everything. And I prided myself on that me and Josh like beat you those 2 times, right? And like, you know, knocked you out of tournaments twice. And to me it's like this guy's not the best chess player in the world, but he's the guy who for some reason gives Magnus Carlsen the most trouble, and that in and of itself is like a good story. And like just thinking about that, I was like, dude, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Like, you know, for someone to even think of you like that at all. And I was like, that took so much off my back. Cause I was like, yeah, dude, like, if there's moments like that, if there's people who were like, you know, it meant a lot. Just, that's a big thing. Like, it meant a lot to beat you. Or it meant a lot to debate you, right? And I think that was super cool. And then the other one was just, when we were at Nationals, we hit Sam Cooke in, like, I think it's the second or last elim of MPDA. And it was a really close round, and they ended up winning. And after the round, like, Sam, and this is the year after he had won Nats, was like, wow, you guys were really good. Like, you definitely gave us, like, the hardest time of anyone, blah, blah, blah. And he was really nice and, you know, got to know him and stuff from that. But it's like, that was, like, dope, too, because that was, like, someone who I, like, very much fanboyed and, like, idolized at the time. And so, I just think that the biggest things to me have, I guess it comes back to what Sasan said, right? Which is, like, the affirmations are important. And so if you have those for people in the community or on your team or on other teams, definitely, like, let them know. Because that quote-unquote imposter syndrome thing, like, is real, and you might make a big difference, right? Just letting someone else know. I do this all the time to this day. Like, people who are current competitors, when I was a competitor, I'd reach out to people and be like, hey, I just think you're super duper dope, and, like, best of luck to you, good luck, get your natty, blah, 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 right? But yeah.
For me, I was never that invested as a competitor. Right? Like, for me, it was always more of like a, like, am I right? Like I know I can't beat you because I'm not fast and I'm not technical. But, like, really, if we stopped and we talked about it, like, I'm right, aren't I? Which isn't a great mentality for a competitor, but that carried over into my coaching because as a coach, like, that's the ultimate contest. Like, oh, you're going to do the work and you're going to do the grind and you care about the competitive success and all you need is someone to help you identify what's right and, like, what's strategic and what's, you know. So, all of my sort of, like, investment in, like, my identity in debate wasn't so much as a competitor. It's much more so as a coach. Like, I don't really remember my competitive career. I remember a little bit, but I remember my coaching career much better. I remember tournaments I coached, where we were, who we were going against, what topics I was prepping. I remember way more of arguments I helped prep and rounds I was nervous about as a coach than as a competitor. There are a few validating moments, and there was a lot of, like, imposter syndrome there too, for various reasons, right? But rather than call it imposter syndrome, I'll call it, like, a need for validation. Definitely that. The biggest things that helped externally from other people, the first has been, like, you being a super successful competitor and, like, not me being like, I coached that kid, but you being a super successful competitor, knowing all this stuff about debate, knowing all these coaches and competitors, and then still, like, vouching for me and being like, you know, Sasan's, like, understanding of debate is, like, really high. Like, he doesn't know all of the, like, flavor of the month theory positions, but, like
game knowledge versus mechanics, your game knowledge is very, very high. It's just you don't care about getting in a server and practicing last hitting or whatever. Yeah.
No. So that's been great. And then just, like, you know, you get a lot of, you go to nationals or something, right? Fire Pie or something, and you get a lot of people come up to you and be like, you judged my first round, or you did this, and it's like, you gave me this advice, and that was, like, really helpful. I'm like, thank you. And that's really cool.
That is super cool. It's super weird.
It's so weird. And they'll be like, you judged my first round, and I go, oh.
Dude, I've gotten, like, a few, like, I watched you in this debate, like, here or whatever, and I wasn't in debate yet, and then I got into debate.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's great.
Yeah, you don't really get used to it. But, personally, I have my own, like, coaching mountaintops, right? Like, the first time I coached 10 teams at the same time at a tournament, like, where I was prepping 10 teams at the same time, I don't know how well we did or who won or whatever, but I walked out of that like thinking like that was objectively an accomplishment. Like there are many people in this activity that have never done that. The other one was closing out novice at your tournament. Because yeah, the competitors are novice, but the coaches aren't, right? Like it's
Well, and also your competitors are novice.
right.
You know what I mean? If it's novice against novice, it's like,
Well, that's what
if
I'm
it's
saying.
open against novice, then yes, it's not.
Well, that's
impressive.
what I'm
Yeah,
saying,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's not like novice is inherently as much an accomplishment, but from the prep perspective, like I'm not out prepping the novice team, I'm out prepping their coaches. And we were in 2 semifinal rounds. One of my teams was the AF, one of my teams was the NEG. And I prepped them by myself, as far as I remember. And we 3-0'd both rounds. So that was really cool to be like, dude, you and your entire coaching staff and all of your open debaters who stuck around to help versus me at like half capacity. And I still won like, because like I have to do that and it's exact opposite at the same time.
I think that actually is potentially the subject of its own video, but whatever, because we're just recording.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to take the wins. I think you have to find goals and objectives and things, and then be like, I don't give a fuck if this person from this school or this team or this ranking or whatever the fuck cares about this. Like, this was a victory for me.
Yeah.
You have to like.
You can't wait for other people to tell you that you've reached an objective level of success. You never will, right? Like everyone talks about my sister as the beacon of success, except for my dad.
And your sister.
No, my sister's like has a healthy attitude about it. She's like, yeah, dude, I'm doing great. Things are good. My sister's about to finish physician's assistant school through Yale. But for my dad, it's like somebody who got such a good score on the MCAT should have been a doctor, not a physician's assistant. It's like, dude, she didn't want to be a doctor. And
his dad, for the record, is a doctor.
Yeah. So he's like even more an objective level of success, and he doesn't see that with himself. And that's really what it is. It's like because he doesn't think he's reached success, how can my sister if she hasn't surpassed him? You know? And
dude, that's a huge one.
Mm-hmm.
That exact descriptor of like, they haven't done this thing that I've done, so they must be worse than me, regardless of if that thing is like required or whatever.
Right. And the other thing is my dad has this coworker named Dave. And Dave has a boat. And my dad will not stop talking about Dave's boat. Buddy, Dave has a boat. Do you want to go on Dave's boat? It's like, no, I want a boat. Dad, you don't like the water. What the fuck are you going to do with a boat?
Not be in the water.
And I was like, buddy. The boats are the ultimate symbol of success. Like in my dad's mind, Dave's boat is the ultimate symbol of success.
Did you see this on screen? Just how insane I look because of the sun.
Oh, that's crazy. You look like you're wearing a sheet of paper as a... Yeah, but the rest of it's
yeah,
not
it's fine because
bit.
I just noticed. But yeah, no, he's right.
He's right. Boats are the ultimate symbol of success.
Yeah, in the sense. Well, I mean, I don't know.
It's like he's like, if I get the boat, I'll finally be enough.
Which it won't be. But
no.
The thing with boats is they're not necessary. And so, like a house, like yeah, you have a house and it's really big or whatever, but you need a house. Car, you need a car.
Yeah. Right. It's how bad an investment they are is why. Yeah. Well, they're like the worst thing you can buy.
Yeah, there's like that quote about it. It's like the happiest days of a boat owner's life are the day they buy and sell their boat.
Yeah. Yeah, but, well, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, these things are a choice. How you feel about yourself and your performance and your success and your worth is a choice. Now, that choice can be informed by things. You can choose not to think you're successful for good reason, right? You can choose not to be satisfied for good reason. But it's a lot like confidence in general, in public speaking, right? People who are starting out and they're nervous about speaking or nervous about debate or nervous about whatever have it in their head that if only they reach some level of accomplishment, they'll no longer feel nervous. And that doesn't work because nervousness is a physiological response to a certain trigger. And your brain just doesn't think about, like, well, in the past, I've blah, blah, blah. Like, that's just not how the physiology of it works. And in fact, that makes it worse because you think, I shouldn't be feeling nervous, and I am. What the fuck is wrong? Is it actually worse? Am I actually not as good as I thought? Blah, blah, blah. And that sends you down a spiral. Ultimately, your success and your experience and whatever will help deal with nervousness, but really what it is it's a choice. You have to choose to feel confident before you're ready to, right? You have to choose to commit and be like, I'm just gonna fucking do this thing. And then based on the results of it not being so bad, other people not being like, you seemed really nervous and stuff like that, that helps make it easier next time. Because the physiological response is still there, but the choice to ignore it and keep going through it is a rational choice, and you can use your memory and all of that stuff. So really, you never get rid of the physiological uh-oh impulse, but it gets to a point where you just ignore it. Like, you don't even notice it anymore. As opposed to, well, you just start out and it's like this huge struggle, and then eventually you're like, okay, we're going in again, let's do it. And then eventually you just get up there and then you don't really think about it. But if someone asked me at the end of any speech or even a class I was teaching, anything like that, if I was nervous, I'd probably be like, yeah, a little bit, you know?
I think like 5 years, maybe even longer. This is like early days. This is when you were still with living with Joey.
Mm-hmm.
We were at the place, we were practicing for stage or something, just you and me, and you were talking about you were playing Dark Souls, and I was like, man, like you're dying a lot or like something, right? Something was happening, and I was getting so frustrated for you. I was just like, dude, it's been like 17 times. Why are you still going? Blah, blah. And like, then you beat it, and you were like, you're like, Paul, you know what a surgeon does? You know, a surgeon goes to work, and you know, they go and they do surgery on someone, and they do 6-hour surgery. They're doing the whole thing right, and then the patient dies, and they go, oh, well, next surgery. And I think that in some ways, that's kind of what you have to do, where it's like, I don't think the surgeon isn't somewhat upset or affected.
No, dude,
or
how
whatever.
the fuck could you not? They're a human being.
Yeah, I think that learning how to cope or forming habits when you've, when you've identified things like that is important. It's actually kind of what it's really funny because I think it's like the third least viewed video on the channel, but I did that thing on mindfulness. And that's really what I was trying to get at and why I think people should do it or whatever. Because it's like, step one is identifying that you are experiencing a physiological response to something.
Yeah.
And then step two is establishing a habit, a pattern, a response, whatever, for that thing. And then acting towards your goals in service of your values.
And you can watch
regardless of the response.
But before we get too down the rabbit hole of confidence and success, the analogy is it's the same with feeling successful or feeling worthy or feeling whatever. Like, at some point it's a choice you have to make. And the more you make that choice, the easier it is. And I'm not going to be the person to tell you, I don't think every person should walk around with that sense of success all the time, you know. But I think it's up to you to have an informed decision of like, what are my goals, right? So real quick, it sounded like you had a thing. In fact, go do your thing, and then I'll come back to this.
Oh no, my only thing is just that for me, it's not like a confidence thing. Like you have to do the thing, like do the work, do the job, regardless of how you feel, right? And that's true if you're sick, or if you're sad, or if you're stressed, or if you're scared, or whatever, right? You have to just do the thing. Mm-hmm. And my point is that, like, it's not like in these moments you're not terrified before you have to do it, but it's just acting in the way you're supposed to, despite that. That is the important part. And it's people, you know, there's so many like cliches about it, but like, I don't know how to teach that other than by saying, like, if you're not even aware of it happening in the moment, if you're only aware of it after it's already occurred, then it's too late, and you need to do something to resolve it. But that's all I have, so go ahead and just...
You know anything about bowling?
I know things about bowling, yeah.
You know things about, like, bowling, like, as the organized sport?
Minimally.
Let's not do bowling. Let's do cricket.
I know way less about cricket than I do about bowling.
That's what I want.
Okay.
How do you know someone is a great cricket player?
I was told they're a great cricket player.
Okay. How else? That's an important. I'm not brushing that aside.
Do you mean in general, or me personally? How would I know?
How would you know?
I mean, step one for me, like I said, would be like someone tells me they're great, right? That's how it
Which goes back to what you were saying in debate. Like, when people are good, we can talk about it. It doesn't diminish us to like be like, that person's great.
Sure.
And that helps. But let's say that's not there. Let's say you don't like find a list of top 25 cricket players of all time.
I'd have to watch them. Well, I'd have to learn cricket first. I'd have to know about cricket to like understand what it means to be good, and then I'd probably have to watch.
I think there's an easier step than that, but I think that is the next step. Like, don't think of a person. Think about a country or team.
I mean, they're winning in theory. Like
winning what? What do you know about cricket?
I think there's a World Cup.
Right. So the point is that like there's one thing, and you're like, that's the biggest thing. Whoever wins that is good. You have no idea what the other tournaments are and how do they rank up. If they're like, oh, we won this tournament and whatever, you have no understanding of that.
You know what's a banger analogy?
Yeah.
Banger. This last year in competitive Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
Because there's 2 tournaments a year. They're called the majors, that are basically the World Championships, and one team won both of those. But the team that won the most championships in the year and won the Grand Slam, like winning 4 of like 6 events, blah blah blah, isn't them. And so it's like, but everyone's like, well, the other team's better because they won the World Championships. It's like, this team won more things that had the same exact opponents, but because it's not called the major.
Sure, that's the thing though. Like, so I think in debate people are like, well, what's the thing that is like, you're good, you won Nats? And so people are like, well, when I win Nats, I'll be a good debater, right? How would someone who doesn't know anything about acting know someone is a good actor?
I think the kind of same things they have to do, because there's no competition other than I guess the Oscars.
That is the Oscars, right? Oh, they got an Oscar. They're a good. You mean 5-time Oscar winner so and so? Of course they're a great actor, right? But you know more about acting, right?
Yes.
Let's scoot up a little bit. I think the lighting's gonna be better.
All right. Look at this right now. Look at this right now. Look at the screen.
Oh my lord. Yes. You know more about acting.
Mm-hmm.
What to you makes someone a good actor? How do you know someone's a good actor?
I think acting, more than like a lot of disciplines, is about the eye test, right? Like, there's no like in other events, right, when they talk about the eye test, right, they're like, well, there's the statistics, right? So it's like LeBron scores this many points, but also if you just
Box
watch
office,
him,
whatever.
if you just watch him though, you literally know that he's a good player, or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with acting, I think that's like more true than any of kind of the other things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the two biggest sort of criteria for me a lot of the time, but this also comes partially from being trained in like method acting type stuff and being into that, is I think one is obviously just kind of how they make you feel or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the emotional response you get, etc. But two is like how do they disappear into the role? Like if you're watching, there's some actors who like have an issue where they're so famous, like they're good actors but not like amazing actors. But when you're watching the movie the whole time, you're like, that's Tom Cruise. That's Tom Cruise. That's
Brad Pitt.
Yeah, exactly, right. And there's other actors who like, despite being in a ton of movies, like you're like, oh wow, that's like I can't believe that's him, or like things like that. I think Gary Oldman's a really good example of that.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Bale,
Mm-hmm.
Great actor, and it's mostly guys who do like method kind of stuff, right? Where it's like, if you don't like Bruce Wayne, that's fine or whatever, right? But like, if you go watch
Prestige.
The Prestige, if you go watch The Prestige, it's like not even the same human being,
Right.
And I think that for me is a big thing, right? Like range is really, really important.
Mm-hmm. Daniel Day-Lewis and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's a good actor. I think he's boring though.
Well, so I think the point is, like the better you get at debate, the more developed your vocabulary is for picking out a good debater, right? Like, how many Oscars has Brad Pitt won?
I think 0.
You think he's good?
Pretty good, yeah.
I mean,
he's been in some great things. He's had some great roles.
Leonardo DiCaprio, like he just got his.
He's really good.
He's really good. He just got it for like The Revenant, which I didn't see, right? But the idea is that like those objective mountaintop measurements,
Scorsese,
like
too.
Yeah, it's like they miss people. They give the people like Jared Leto has an Oscar. Leonardo DiCaprio didn't.
Eminem has an Oscar.
Eminem has an Oscar.
Before Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, but his is for music.
Yeah, but it's an Oscar, brother.
Yeah,
and that's
true.
all they know is you won an Oscar.
Right. So the point is that like the more you understand about it, the less your opinion is based off of these arbitrary mountaintop achievements. And then maybe more by statistics, and then after that it's more like, look, I can just see it. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I can just see someone. Like Daniel Day-Lewis describing Heath Ledger's performance in Brokeback Mountain, and he was like, that final scene where he's looking in the closet is the best acting I've ever seen. I don't know what he's talking about. I know it's a good scene. I could not begin to describe to you why that scene with Heath Ledger looking in the closet, I guess it's a dresser. He's looking at the dresser, and there's a jacket, and it just shows his face. I couldn't begin to describe to you why that's good, or how it compares to other things, or why it's a demonstration of skill.
I think another great scene that you would know and would be like a great example is the garage scene in season 6 of Breaking Bad, where Hank finally confronts Walter or whatever, and like he's like, "It was you," you know what I mean? Blah blah blah. Blah. Walter in that scene, like I'm watching not Walter.
Bryan Cranston.
Bryan Cranston, Hal, as I called him.
Yeah.
But like, there's this thing he says at the very end of it, where he's like, if you really don't know who I am, perhaps the best course of action is to tread lightly. Like literally, if you just hear those last 3 or 4 words, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
His voice changes so drastically, it's insane. But like, he's not doing anything different. He's looking at him exactly the same and whatnot. But like that, the ability to call upon that vocal dynamic or whatever alone is like.
Well, so not to totally distract ourselves talking about acting and great actors, though. I'd like that.
That'd be great. Yeah.
You know what? Fuck it. No. No, the idea is that like when you start out, part of it is that like you haven't developed your vocabulary for what makes another debater good, so it's hard to recognize those things in yourself outside of having external validation, right? Like it only gets hard. Like coaching, how do you know someone's a good coach?
That one's really hard.
That's really hard, right? You're like, okay, well, they have good, successful competitors. Who's the last Alexis Litsky competitor who was like, clearly you can point to and be like, oh, that person's the best?
No idea.
But Alexis clearly is a great coach.
Yeah.
So you can't just do that, right? Like, it doesn't...
Super respected. I don't know anyone in the region or anyone who just knows of her at all who doesn't think she's, like, great.
Right. So that's what I mean, right? Like, okay, well, whoever won Coach of the Year. Like, Coach of the Year is who deserves the biggest thank you, or who, like, deserves to be rewarded for what happened this year. That's not necessarily who's, like, the best coach.
I think the danger here, though, is that people get away. I think going the other way is just as bad. I guess
People get away with invalidating people's accomplishments.
Yeah, dude. It's like, dude, I've looked back, and
Yeah.
like, I just can't find anyone who's won a national championship in debate who wasn't good at debate, who wasn't really good at debate.
No, I understand
You know,
that.
but I
Yeah.
mean, but people will be like, it's like, oh, they just they won this. Yeah, they were right. They they had a 90% win rate or whatever. But
Yeah.
like, they're not. They were just okay.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that kid when I was who was it was Meredith told me about him. There was this kid.
Oh, at your tournament?
Well, Meredith.
I think they were talking about that at UOP, yeah.
This kid came up to me or whatever. Or no, came up to Meredith and was talking to him, and he's like, "Oh, do you know any people?" Because she was at CC's, and she's like, "Oh, I only really know like Paul and Dallas because I come around and help and stuff." And they go, "Oh yeah, Paul and Dallas are cool, but like, they're just like, they're not good at this or they're not good at that or whatever." And like, I didn't even know who the hell this kid was. This kid went to the NPTE and like literally came in like 32nd place. And we came in like 4th or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but
I just remember thinking like the sheer audacity of people who were like, yeah, well now that I'm in the know, like.
But I think that's growing pains. I think that's an awkward period
It's so
between.
funny.
I think you start out and you're like, okay, it's accolades, like pure biggest accolades.
Because that's all you have to evaluate it on, because you don't know anything.
And then up here is like, no, I understand this activity and I can gauge skill well. And in between is the awkward growing phases. In between is like where first year actors are like, you know who the greatest actor of all time is? Johnny Depp.
Oh.
Or like some random,
Yeah.
They're like, I know a little bit about acting, and let me tell you, like, the Liu Kang in the Mortal Kombat movie.
Liu Kang in the Mortal Kombat.
Fucking, that's the pinnacle. Like, he's the greatest, right? And this is the case with music a lot too. Like how every metalhead thinks that like metal is like the most sophisticated, like most like classical, most like hardest intellectual music. And they're like, what do you listen to? And they're like, Job for a Cowboy?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, dude.
Job for a Cowboy.
Look out,
You
jazz.
know who the greatest actor in the Mortal Kombat movie is? Liu Kang's brother who dies at the beginning. Where
Yeah, it's
Shang
pretty
Tsung
good.
pulls his head back.
Yeah.
And he goes,
I was actually, what's funny is my top acting moment in that movie is next to his head, Shang Tsung going, "Your soul is mine." That's the acting peak of that movie.
That's feeling your partner. You know what I mean? Really taking him in.
Really elevate them to another level.
Your brother's soul is mine.
But the point is, I don't think that kid was inherently not Liu Kang's brother.
The kid, yeah, whatever.
I think that's growing pains. I think he's rejected that like biggest accolades necessarily means biggest skill. We'll get to that in a second, right? But he hasn't quite developed his vocabulary. I mean, the thing is that he's objectively wrong. That's the problem. The problem is that you were a really skilled debater, and he just didn't understand enough to know that, like...
Well, but what was he going on? Word of mouth.
Well, yeah.
Right, he was like taking... Because he had never met me. He had never
Mhm.
seen me debate, blah, 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 or anything.
Right.
He was just like, oh, yeah, you know. Hey, bro,
I-
what'd you end up doing, bro? What'd you end up doing? Random kid whose name I don't even remember.
Okay, let's not.
All right, anyway, going away.
Let's not bully strangers.
Hey, he bullied me. No, I'm sorry.
Well, so I think there's a balance, right? I think you have to acknowledge people's accolades and praise them for it, because if not, why else are we doing this? Why have a national championship
Why
when
not just be nice and not shit on people for no reason?
Well, I think the reason is because people need a vocabulary with which to measure themselves, right? And them going bad, bad, good, bad helps them track where they are. They should find a less toxic way of doing that, but I think that's why we're not going to get rid of it, and that's why the impulse is there. People are trying to size up.
We just read the K enough and like.
Yeah, but I think that's why it's there, right? So, I think people also use that for the same reason to justify why they're better than they probably actually are. By being like, this person's bad. Or like, we lost to them, but they're like the best ever. Like, so I think there's a lot of, I think really it just comes down to not necessarily personal insecurity, but a urge to, a need to contextualize skill in the activity with your own measure of skill. And I think there's better, less toxic ways to do it. I think do that, but be nice. Dude, we are working like crazy over winter break. So far, my winter break, excluding like a couple days around Christmas and the days of like New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, I've worked every day for several hours with some of my DVC competitors, my college competitors, and they've been putting in the work. So Paul and I are like, great, let's like reward them. Let's try to give them the best coaching experience we can. So we're like, great, let's put this thing together. Let's bring the best debater from UOP in to work with them. Let's see if we can get other coaches to come in. And while we're at it, let's just see who else is in the community that we want to help out. Novice, open, whatever. Like, who lives within an hour from us that's been cool, that have been good members of the community, and who we're like want to work with and give a little bit back to. And it's crazy when I ask my kids, like, hey, like, who is in this activity in the region that you would want to see there? How much of it is just based on, like, being a nice person? And that makes or breaks you. Like, these things happen, not always explicitly like this.
But conversations are happening in group chats.
And
on teams.
and opportunities come and go as a result of that.
We had this at Pacific a number of times over the years when I was better, where Steve would be like, hey, these kids from this community college or whatever want to come to practice. Like, would y'all be okay with that? And like every single time that discussion is basically either everyone's like, oh, whatever, it sounds fun, or everyone's like, oh, they're a great person, or they're like, no, that person, like, you know, for lack of a better word, like, fuck that person.
Right.
Like, they're mean, they're not whatever, blah, 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 blah. It's never like, well, they're not good enough, or they're too good. It's just that, like, are they, it's the Van test.
It's the Van test.
Yeah, the Van test, man. The Van test. I think a lot of you kids on Reddit will pass the Van test. And,
that's true.
I think you need to.
The Van test is DVC, Diablo Valley College, has a strong competitive team. And the national tournament we go to is called the Fire Pie, and we also travel to some other things and whatever. And they have entry caps, so you can take 14 people to nationals. And the idea is that those people are also limited in how well they can succeed as festival finals. Point being that everyone's top 5 competitors are really goddamn good. Everyone's top, like, well, not everyone's, but of the best 5 teams, all of their top 5 competitors are gonna win most of their events. So really it's determined by how good is your 9th best competitor, how good is your 11th best competitor, how good is your 14th best. So all of that is the force that indicates you want as many good people as possible on the team. You can't spare anyone that has talent and any shot of winning. The van test actually is the opposite of that. The van test says, look, we have to sit in a van for 6 hours to get there. And if I don't want you in my van, we're not taking you to nationals. Doesn't matter how good you are. In fact, I mean, he's not going to check this. In fact,
Don't say names, obviously.
one of our top IEers not going. Doesn't pass the van test this year. But yeah, the point is that, like, one, success is not all that matters even to a highly competitive team, right? The most competitive high school team of all time in the speech, James Logan, they're like, no one's bigger than the team. I don't care who you are. Like, if you have problems, we're not going to take you to state. We're not going to take you to nationals, right? And ultimately, that helps the team. Like, I'm more interested in getting someone with a toxic personality out because, yeah, they might win their 4 events, but they're going to compromise the other 13 people from doing well. And the one person never outweighs the team. And if you're on a team where that's not true, I think your coach is fucking up.
I also think that, like, to a certain degree, meritocracy is a myth, and also just not the way that the world actually operates, regardless of how you want it to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as debates move more towards the, like, debate as a game model or whatever, like, people kind of just believe that, like, well, if I can go faster or more technical or whatever, then I'm just guaranteed to win. But when these conversations are happening, like, you know, as graduate assistants, we get asked, we're like, so who's going to nationals? Who, you know, and it's always like, yeah, well, obviously the best people are going to nationals, but then when it comes towards the bottom of that list.
I'm not a graduate assistant, just to be clear.
Oh, sorry, I'm a graduate assistant. And a professor now. What up?
Yeah.
Coming up. Yeah, that kid from that tournament who talked all that shit. No, I was kidding. No, but, bottom line is, like, these conversations happen, like, when it's on the margins, right? When it's, like, sort of the bubble boy, as they call it, right? When you're on the bubble and one more person gets to go, and, like, you're either on this side of it or on this side of it, the things that come up are like, yeah, but they annoy the shit out of me, or they, you know what I mean, they're not.
They have a
good to
really
their
bad
teammates.
attitude.
Yeah.
People, they start shit with people at other schools. They
don't do their work.
Don't do their work. They make people feel uncomfortable. Like, these
they
things.
do all their work, but are, I don't know, mean.
Or,
Yeah.
or, like, let's be honest, like, creepy. Don't do that. My God.
Yeah.
Gotta leave it on a better note than that, though.
Another one.
If you
don't let people live in your head rent free like I do. It's a lot of tenants.
If you had to, if you could be, if you were the best man of any PlayStation 1 video game character and had to give the speech, for whom do you think you could give the best speech?
PlayStation 1?
Yeah, PlayStation 1.
I'm trying to think of how many PlayStation 1 games I played that weren't Tekken.
Well, you got all the Tekken characters. You got Spyro, Crash Bandicoot, Sly Cooper. You
Sly
got
Cooper's PS2.
Is he? Okay, yeah. You got Gex.
Played that.
You got all the Twisted Metal guys. You got Siphon Filter. You got Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2. No, I think 2 was. PS2.
I think I could get a reasonably good one for King from Tekken.
King from Tekken, who, like, doesn't speak. He just has the tiger growls, but he's a person in a mask.
Yes.
Well, yeah. What would you say?
You know, it's terrible what Metal King like did to you.
Armor King.
Armor
Yeah.
Whatever.
You was gonna say that at his wedding?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know how that guy burned down the orphanage. It was a shame to hear, but anyway, we're here to celebrate. There was this game, Not Ready to Rumble Boxing. It was just called Boxing on the PS1, and it had all these weird characters, and one of them was named Red. And I feel like that guy and I, because I think there was either something wrong with my copy or it was the worst game ever, because you couldn't really save progress, and you also didn't have a full roster of characters unlocked. So you had to like play the game, unlock the characters, and then beat the game with them. I don't know. It really is one of the worst games of all time. But
What was it called?
I think it was just called Boxing.
Dude, you remember when arcades used to have that game where like it had like the handles to box, but like
That's before my time.
Oh yeah,
How
you
old
would have
were
been in
you?
America, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't
Jeez.
in America.
Dude, you missed the greatest boxing game of all time.
Yeah. Did it have the hands you operated, but also mechanical hands to represent you getting punched in the face?
No.
That would be great.